Welcome to Real Life and Archetypes. My name is Marina. Today I'm going to go into a very long interview of Christian Craighead in the Shawn Ryan Show. I'm not going to play the whole interview, just a few clips. The interview is number 92. It's the episode number 92 of the Shawn Ryan Show. Shawn Ryan has graciously given public permission to anyone and everyone who wants to use his content. I'm very grateful for that. This is an interview that has stayed with me ever since I watched it. And I thought, I really want to go into it. So I'm just going to take a few clips and I'm going to explore archetypes. Maybe sometimes it's going to be a little bit of a speculation, but bear with me. I just want to play with archetypes. Special operators are a very special breed, and I find that they have a lot to show us about, living life and learning. And I just think they're fascinating people. They embody, the archetypal hero in a real way. And in this interview, I just thought, there's something about this interview that just, I don't know how to explain it, because Shawn Ryan always goes very deep with all interviews. But this one, maybe because there's a lot of archetypes that I can comment on, maybe because this guy is European as I am, maybe there's something cultural that is particular to this interview, and I will explore that too. And I want you to watch the original interview. The point here is not to play the interview that already exists and to replicate and to talk about the same thing. My goal here is to just show you how to look at or play with archetypes when you're looking at somebody else or at yourself, how to recognize those energies and what they're for. Because we are always, revealing what archetype is at play with, the choice of words, our behaviors. So I think it's very interesting from that perspective to look at this interview. All special operators, they have something very particular from their experience. They have peak experiences, and therefore these are people that really go deep into reflection and understanding what is going on. They're very deep. They have an intelligence and a physical strength and so many things. They just really go through the entire process of the human journey, and they represent, the hero's journey, right? So those who arrive at a place like the Shawn Ryan Show and they sit down and they tell their story, they've gone through this whole process of their life and then getting into special operations and then going through their crises and transitions and deepening whatever it is that they understand from their experiences. So the people who end up sitting in that kind of chair and communicating to us and telling us their experiences, that's, the sort of the most special kind of testimony that we can get, because there aren't many people like that, and there aren't many that go and, take on an interview such as this one, which was 3 hours, and I cannot recommend it enough. I really think it's my favorite episode, I think, so far. Very, very interesting. So I just want to begin with the first clip. Let's just jump right into it and listen to this man.
Childhood. You ready to dig in?
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
A little bit, but we'll see.
What are you nervous about?
Like not being exciting enough. Not being
not being exciting enough. It's the best interview ever.
I'm trying to. I'll tell my story, and I think just to start with, is it interesting? Maybe. Is it cliched? Sometimes, but you could call childhood, and this is applicable for everyone. This is when your training starts, because whatever you do, whether it be an international event, whether it be you're a sportsman, a soldier, a manager, or you're in training the moment you are born. That's when your training starts, and you're being prepared for something.
Mm-hmm.
And some things are bigger than others.
Yeah.
But you're always in training. So you could say it's my childhood. It's one way of framing it. The other way of saying it is it's the start of my training.
All right. So, well, that's intense because already obviously he's going to tell his story, but Shawn Ryan hasn't even started to ask questions. He's already going in. So he's in the storyteller mode. And so, as with any beginning, I think about the hero's journey, the hero structure, which is every new beginning, you need to pay attention to what is going to stand out because there is something that is trying to emerge. This is the story of the hero archetype, that there's an identity that is trying to emerge, okay? This is what is important to understand about this archetype. So already this guy, there's not even a question. Shawn Ryan just said childhood, and then he goes on. The on button is pressed, and Christian Craighead goes ahead, and you can tell that he's thought about it a lot and that he thinks about his own life and the interpretation of what has happened in his life and what he's done. So that's an archetype, by the way. That's the explorer archetype. It's the one that is trying to understand, to have a bigger picture of life, to understand the self, the meaning of life, of your own life, of others, and to look for, some kind of wisdom that is going to give some moral direction to what you're doing. So this is very important, and you'll see that it's very common to special operators, the way that they need to have this mind map, some sense of morality about how they're going to channel their force. And the hero archetype is all about how you're going to project your forces so that you become, as you go, you're going to become a kind of person, either, a force for good or a force for bad. That's why these people, they really embody this archetype in a way that is so interesting. Not just this archetype, but all of the others, because they are trained to develop self-awareness, which is something that we need to do from the perspective of the hero archetype. And that self-awareness is about, who you are in the present moment, and you become aware of your strengths and your vulnerability, which is, I made a video about that, which is something that can be very painful when you go through crisis and you're very aware of your vulnerabilities and, what you feel and the way that you're suffering. So this is a special breed of people. But he starts, and this is what is interesting, when you look at, he's starting with the storyteller. The explorer archetype is also the storyteller, because we're going to interpret life and create a story. And the story we tell ourselves is going to be important because, if we don't believe that we're going somewhere and we have a map that is telling us, hey, this is where you're going, and you sort of have to have, a belief system that is going to take you there, and the knowledge, the wisdom, the theory that you create in your own mind to explain, the meaning of what it is that you're doing and where you're going, you can completely disconnect from a sense of meaning in life, okay? So the hero is all about the present and the presence and activity and what you're doing in the moment and being hyper motivated in the present. So motivation is in the present moment. It's not about motivation about the future. It's about motivation about what you do. Remember that the hero archetype is always telling you, you need to find something to love. You need to find purpose. And that relates directly to how you're going to be activated to be in activity that highly motivates you, that is going to engage all of your energy and motivation into something. The person that you become as you are active, and being active is being alive. and the hero wants to have like a peak experience. These guys, they have a peak experience of life as special operators. They feel the alive, it's full of adrenaline. It's very exciting, very dangerous. There's a lot of baggage with this this line of work from what they tell us. Not that I would know personally, obviously, but what is interesting to hear from them is because of how hyper awake and alive they are, the way that they live life, the way that they interpret life, the way that they bring back their wisdom is so powerful and interesting to all of us. Not just, and this is basically Shawn Ryan's mission, to provide, some real history, but also to help people deal with situations of transitions and coming back from war, for example. But what archetypes do is that we relate to other people, even though we haven't had the exact same experiences, because they relate to an essence. This is what is important about archetypes. It's about the essence. So I'm not a special operator, but when I watch an interview like that, I relate because of, my own experiences and what this guy is talking about. So he's establishing the first thing that he talks about, and that's important because what he's saying is childhood is your training ground. So from the moment that you were born, this is a sense of destiny. And this is of the hero archetype, by the way. This is totally of the hero archetype, to have a sense of destiny. So when you have a lot of that energy, now pay attention, the grandiosity that it can bring. This is an aspect that also comes in this archetype that can be present, especially when it's combined with another one. But I'm digressing. So you were born to become who you really are. That's what the hero is about. The hero's journey is really about self-discovery. So this guy is telling you from the moment you're born, you're training to become who you are. And we usually look back at our experiences and we say experiences have shaped us. And yes, that's true. But to me, there's another angle that I look at it, and it's more of a spiritual angle, I guess. That's how I would call it. That our experiences reveal really who we are. It's a little different than saying like your experiences shape you. Well, yes, they do. But they actually are going to have this function of revealing an essence that was always there. And when I think of it that way, it reminds me of a quote that I want to show you by Michelangelo. So Michelangelo, he said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." What a beautiful thing to say. And it is a quote attributed to him. And because what he wanted to say is that the sculpture already existed in the block of marble and he could see it. And what he did, his function was to remove the excess material to reveal what is inside. And so that's symbolic of uncovering potential. Okay, so that relates totally to the hero archetype. There's another, this is just an amazing way of looking at it. So this is, when I think of the hero's journey, that's the journey of self-discovery. What are you made of? Who are you really? Because when you push yourself, you're going to get much closer to something more pure about your intentions, what you really want. You get stronger, so you become more capable, and ideas are going to come into your head, and that's the direction that you're going to take. It's going to be closer and closer to, your spirit, your soul, whatever you want to call it. So the hero's journey is about revealing really who you are. So your experiences, what they're going to show is something that was always there to begin with. There's another quote that speaks to that. That's by T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration. Look at the word exploration, the explorer archetype. So this is a statement of philosophy, understanding, interpreting experiences. And at the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. So this speaks to the cycles of life, that where at the end we return. But in the period of this transition from the end to a new beginning, we're supposed to let go of things, that don't serve us anymore. But we reach higher levels of awareness. And so that's supposed to help us return to the world with renewed purpose and renewed love and passion. So this quote from T.S. Eliot, it really speaks to, the nature of the revelatory nature of self-discovery that's going to reveal really who you are, what you're made of, and what you can do. So we explore the world, we explore ourselves, and we understand things that have always been there. And this is so true, about energies that we have, that you're going to feel that it's something that you've always known, especially if you have strength, the masculine energy. Maybe you're going to have experiences that are going to challenge you to really hone in, to redefine or refine that energy, but you're going to know that it was always there. That's because archetypes, so this is obviously the way that I look at things in terms of archetypes and based on the birth charts. But you look at archetypes, these energies are always there, but they have a specific function for particular circumstances or dynamics in life. But because they're always there, we sort of know them, but we will really discover them, when they're supposed to be discovered. So self-discovery, the hero archetype, it's all about, hey, you have an energy that's masculine energy. We all have it. Men have a lot more. They are plugged into it by default. Not politically correct. Very true, though. But that's the way that it is. And special operators, it's exponentially higher, the level of energy that these guys have. You can see it, the way they behave, the way they talk, the kind of world that they have to deal with is just an extraordinary. These people are just a special breed. To me, it's like, special operators and astronauts. It's just such a rare kind of person, and I find them very, very interesting.
And I grew up I had a single mother. I never met my father until later on in life. So I grew up with, for the first 7 years, my mother, my aunt, and my grandma. My grandmother is the person I am today.
My grandmother is the person that I am today. So we have to remember that's quite a statement. Okay, so he's establishing, childhood. And so the first 7 years, only women, but the most important woman is his grandmother. So my grandmother is the person that I am today. What he means is that her influence is at the core of, how he was shaped into becoming who he is. And he talks a lot about his grandmother. You need to go back to the original interview to go more into this. I think these are moments that are so personal. They need to stay there where they were created on the Shawn Ryan Show. I'm not, I don't want to be like intrusive. I just want to talk about archetypes. But this is, it's very, very emotional and deep. But this statement, I'm the person that my grandmother made me. So what he means is that her influence, this is what family dynamics are about. This is what the family archetype is about. It's about the personal self. It's about the emotional self. It's about the things that started to develop and grow when you were younger. And there's a part of us that started to develop. And then we need to continue to develop it. And that's the challenge in life. that we have to, at some point, become mature and do that ourselves. Whereas, in the beginning, our family is supposed to create the right conditions for us to develop. And he talks about his childhood experiences. We're going to go and continue here because that's really quite special. But the influence of his grandmother, that's also related to the elder or older self archetype, which is, somebody who has a higher position of status than you, whether it's naturally by age or in a hierarchy, a theme that is very, very significant in this guy's interview, by the way.
She takes full responsibility of the man I became is all because of her.
Wow.
And she raised me. So I grew up as an only child.
So she takes full responsibility. Another word that is associated with the older self archetype, the sense of right and wrong, responsibility, respect. He's going to go into it. But he grew up as an only child. So the concept of the loner, that's very much of the hero archetype, especially for someone like that who has to have so much of that kind of energy just because of, what they do. They have to develop the hyper self-reliance and hyper independence and individuality. So that serves them well for what they do. But the loner can, take up a lot of space in your life. When you're so capable, that can become an issue. All archetypes can have issues and have several levels of expression. But, when you're super capable, super strong, and you've gone through so much, such as these guys, that can become a problem when you go into the normal world. We'll talk about it in other moments of the interview.
I didn't really like my childhood.
What is it about your childhood that you didn't like?
I think it was...
You brought up abuse.
Yeah, I think it was this, and it wasn't. There's what I foresee is plenty of love in my life. It wasn't abuse from family or anything like that, but it was just being exposed to violence at a really young age, and that set a sort of values in me, which some people.
That set values in me. So he's talking about being exposed to violence. You're going to see that in the interview. He gives more details about some experiences that he went through. So that has set values. So that means, values, it's about references that become permanent in us. And so for him, being exposed to violence, that's like a reference point. That's the world that is most natural to him. He was growing up, he was a kid, and he was exposed to a lot of violence, which means that he's going to see the world from that perspective, and it's going to be ingrained in him. So if your natural element is to be in a theater of war or conflict, and where you have to demonstrate your strength, prove yourself, and project your presence and your strength and even violence in his case in the line of work that he did, but that has become a reference point. That is very, very significant, because everything, when we talk about values, there are different aspects to the value system, but the things that we value in terms of what we appreciate, and I've watched other interviews with this guy, and everything related to being a warrior, he loves that. It is his natural element. And when he talks about that it's set, reference values in him, those experiences, that is huge, because what he's saying is that this is my natural element. This is, so like a fish in water, like a tiger in the jungle. That's my natural element. That's what he's saying.
That to me was like pure evil that I witnessed.
Okay, I just want to pause this for a second because in the Shawn Ryan Show, he's given some examples of the violence that he's been exposed to, and he explains that. So you're going to have to watch it. But this thing about recognizing evil, very significant. A lot of special operators, they talk about their experiences and what they've had to do, that they've really seen evil, very evil stuff. So these people have to carry a lot inside. So let's just continue to watch. This is so interesting.
I thought. And then, but here's the interesting thing. Even at a young age, I was thankful. You know what I was thankful for? I was thankful that was me.
Even at a young age, he was thankful. What a statement.
Because I can take that. That was me. And I'm certain, and that's one of the biggest reasons I'm glad for. If it wasn't me that day, they had the taste of blood in their mouth. It would have been someone else. And if I'd been an 8-year-old girl, they would have raped me. I know that. I could see that. And so that was the part for me, was like, I'm glad it was me, because I can deal with that.
I'm glad it was me because I can deal with that. I can take it. That's a spirit of sacrifice. That's also of the hero archetype. This is, I mean, to have that kind of thought when you're so young, this is somebody you're going to see throughout the interview on the Shawn Ryan Show. When you watch it, you have to watch it. He has such a sense of direction of what he wanted to do. But to go through what he went through, which is gruesome, and, you know, he says that there are some things that he keeps to himself, but he's given some examples. To have, I don't know, can you imagine having that thought of saying, thank God it was me and not somebody else? So he has already this sense of justice and wanting to do something about it. We're going to look at that.
Did you know these guys?
I knew of one of them, and then I actually met one of them later on in life, and I turned the tables a little bit. And some people say it's not good what I did, but I gave him a kick in, and he begged for his life. He didn't know who I was.
How long ago, or what's the time frame here?
That would have been probably about 13, 14 years later. No. Like at night, running, and my eyes just straight away locked on like a missile lock. I know who that is.
The eyes locked in straight like a missile up.
First time I'd seen him since, I know who that is. And as you rode past, I grabbed him by the neck, and then issued out some tough justice.
Okay, I don't want to get into, body language. It's not my stuff, but you can feel his emotion. What is interesting is that he chooses to tell the stories that he chooses to tell for a reason. So he's reflected about what is it that has really shaped me, you could say, right? So he's talking about childhood, and now he's talking about re-encountering the perpetrator. So I think there were like a couple of guys, but he's talking here. He recognizes one of the guys. Now he's grown up. He's older, 13 years later. So the passage of time, this is the older self archetype. By the way, time does a lot of amazing things. One of the things it does, and we're going to talk about this later when, he mentions something else about the older self. But he was victimized, brutalized by somebody older, and he was very young. He talks that he meets this guy 13 years later. I don't know how old he was. But now, obviously, he's grown older. So now he can meet on equal terms. And from my calculations, at that age, he was already in the army. And I just want you to pay attention and just look at his face. And this is just listen to him breathe and remember this experience.
So good for you.
And then
How did that feel? Did you feel good afterwards, or did you regret it?
Oh, I didn't regret it. No. I mean, it's maybe not a good message to put out to people, but sometimes you gotta do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta put on that armor. And
Did they know who you were?
No.
Did you let them know who you were?
No.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No.
What did they say?
Like the normal stuff, what someone's begging for their life says.
Oh, okay. So I did that on purpose because I just want you to see Shawn's face, understanding exactly what he's talking about. So he has exposure to violence. Somebody or some guys who are older than him, they are very violent with him. He remembers that. He meets them again. He recognizes he's like a missile, and he decides to execute some tough justice, turning things around, taking action, and being the hero. That's the hero archetype, okay? So that's what he decided to do. And then he says, okay, maybe that's not a message that I should say. Well, in theory, no, you don't want to encourage people to take that, as something that you should be always doing. But in the case that he's referring to, I think we all have the same face as Mr. Shawn Ryan here, because this guy turned the table around. And I want to mention something. Christian Craighead remains silent. He does not tell the guy who he is, what that guy did to him. So there can be several reasons. One of them is that, he could get into trouble, perhaps. But to me, fundamentally, and this is where I go, I don't want to go into try to decode the guy. I don't know the guy. But archetypally, that's some self-control. Because imagine when somebody has done those things to you, and imagine that you gain the strength and the power to turn the tables. And he's established. He's decided to reveal the story because he considers it an example of right and wrong, and balancing things, doing something right because that guy was evil, and he's thinking about all of the other victims that must be around. So he turned the tables around. We don't have the details. We don't need him to tell us our details, but we all have this face. And no, of course you don't regret it. This is something that I love about these guys. They're going to be, straightforward. No, I don't regret it. I don't regret it. That's what he was made for, to do something like that. And listen, if you are shocked by something like that, that's probably because your life was very comfortable, and that's a wonderful thing. Congratulations. So anyway, I'm going to end up the first part here because there's so much more to do. And just let me know if you resonate with something here, with the hero archetype. Is there something in you that you feel that has potential? Do you relate particularly to these special operators? That this is something, I make a lot of videos talking about them. I find them fascinating. Obviously, it's related to, the need to process my own experiences and to gain strength. These are references and examples of very strong people. And sometimes, what I like the most about them, let me just digress a little bit here before I finish. The first time that I saw Shawn Ryan was, and I didn't know who he was. It was quite a few years ago. I can't remember when. It was many years ago. And he had a tiny YouTube channel, and I was just looking into special operators. Was the first time. I didn't know what these people were, but for very specific reasons, I stumbled into their videos. Shawn Ryan was in a video, and I have never been able to find it again, but it must be there because he has older videos. It's just that I don't have the time to watch each of them to find this one that I want to refer to, because it had a huge impact on me. he was outdoors and he was like squatting and filming himself and talking about, he was in transition. He had attempted to, unalive himself. So he was being very vulnerable, very truthful. I love that. This is something that I totally identify with. Just tell the truth of the darkness of life, because it's there, it exists, and we all have to deal with it. Again, we have a spectrum of experiences, but that video, it really, really shook me, because I was looking at a guy from what I, looked up. He was a special, former Navy SEAL, CIA contractor. This is where I started to look at, the concept of transitioning from that old life to the new life. I was going through similar things, but I'm not a special operator. I'm not deluded, but it's the essence. And you see this guy who represents super strength. He was basically, like squatting. It's like almost being on your knees, talking about the most vulnerable kind of stuff that he felt. And I thought that was badass. I thought that was really, it takes balls to do that. And it really switched something in my brain. And then I watched more stuff about others in his group at that time, other special operators. And then later on, a few years later, I suddenly saw, he had this big show now. So good for him. Amazing. Amazing way to turn things around also for your own life. Not only to, exert some justice, but also turn the tables for yourself. So I'm going to leave it there. If you have any comment, please, that's what I'm looking for, conversation and comments. And I will continue with the next parts. I have so many clips. Thank you so much for watching. And I will continue with a commentary of Christian Craighead's interview on the Shawn Ryan Show. Thank you so much for watching.